Art is a reflection of life. Across its many forms, we find parallels to themes and ideas that resonate with the world and our lived experiences. The Legend of Zelda is one such work, reflecting these experiences back to us through its stories and themes. Hey, my name is Skyfoot. I'm a Catholic who likes to analyse the Christian themes in the media we consume, and this is the second part in my series discussing the Legend of Zelda and its ties to Christian theology. In part 1, I endeavoured to focus primarily on the direct Christian themes present within the early games, while only briefly touching upon the allegorical themes found throughout the series. In this video, however, I intend to take a much more deeper dive into those allegorical themes. As such, this video is much more theoretical in nature, and I would definitely encourage you to watch part 1 first before returning to this video. But before we begin, I'd like to first address a common criticism, namely that because Zelda's authorship and intent are not directly Christian, it therefore cannot be considered a Christian franchise. All fiction bears parallels to reality because reality itself serves as the foundation upon which fiction is built. Art imitates life, and sometimes that art reflects ideas deeply personal to us. The Legend of Zelda is no different in that regard. It is a work of art, and like all art, it is a subjective medium that welcomes interpretation from all walks of life, including from devout Christians such as myself. One could very easily look towards Ganondorf's tyranny, for example, and draw parallels to fascism, and I would be inclined to agree with that interpretation because there is genuine substance to the claim, even though the authors most likely were not trying to make a statement about fascism when writing Ganondorf. Likewise, I think making Christian interpretations of Zelda is equally merited. With that aside, let's once again discuss why The Legend of Zelda is deeply Christian. I'd first like to build upon the ideas presented in part 1 before we tread new ground, beginning with the creation of Hyrule. In part 1, I compared the creation of Hyrule to the creation of the world in the Book of Genesis, while also drawing a connection between the Triforce and the Holy Trinity. When Hyrule was established, all three goddesses were present, and likewise in Christian theology, the triune nature of God is present within creation itself. Genesis 1 establishes a distinction between God and the Spirit of God during creation, while God later declares in Genesis 1:26, "Let us make mankind in our image." This establishes a plurality within God that is further developed in the writings of John the Apostle, where John directly connects Christ to the creation of the world. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Yep, Trinitarian theology in a video about the Legend of Zelda. But that aside, the parallel here is not merely just the structured creation of the world, but also that creation itself is presented as the result of unified divinity. And speaking of the divine, let's now discuss the similarities the Golden Goddesses share with the persons of the Holy Trinity, beginning with Din, the Goddess of Power. Din is associated with fire and strength, made evident through her creation of the land and through her spell, Din's Fire. This bears thematic similarities to God the Father, who throughout the Old Testament reveals his presence through fire. In the book of Exodus, God appears to Moses through the burning bush, and later he guides the Israelites through the wilderness as a pillar of fire by night. Likewise, divine judgment is manifested through fire in the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. This display of power through fire is thematic between the two. Meanwhile, Nehru, the goddess of wisdom, bears perhaps the clearest parallels. She is associated with wisdom, order, and love, seen both in her role during the creation of Hyrule and in the protective spell Nehru's Love. According to Hyrule's creation myth, Nehru bestowed law and wisdom upon the world, establishing order within creation itself. This parallels Jesus, the Son of God, who in Christian theology is described as the divine word through whom creation was ordered. In 1 Corinthians, Christ is explicitly called the wisdom of God. Additionally, throughout the Gospels, Jesus repeatedly astonishes crowds with his wisdom and teachings on love, drawing a clear connection between the two. Finally, there is Furore, the goddess of courage. Furore is associated with life and the personal, as she is responsible for creating all the living beings within Hyrule. Her spell, Furore's Wind, further connects her to guidance and support, allowing Link to create waypoints which he can return to later. Here we can draw thematic parallels to the Holy Spirit. In Christian theology, the Holy Spirit is understood as the giver of life, the indwelling presence of God within believers, and the guide who strengthens the faithful in their walk with God. In John 14, Jesus says, "But the Advocate, the Holy Spirit, whom the Father will send in my name, will teach you all things," and likewise in Romans 8, it states that, "For those who are led by the Spirit of God are the children of God." Just as Furore's Wind acts as a supporting spell for Link, the Holy Spirit in Christianity serves as a helper guide for believers. The traits of the Golden Goddesses bear comparable themes to that of the Holy Trinity of Christian theology. Now let's move over to Wind Waker and discuss its origin story. Following Link's triumph over Ganondorf in Ocarina of Time, the Hero of Time is described in legend as having departed from the land. In reality, however, Link was sent back to his childhood by Princess Zelda at the conclusion of the game, leaving the adult timeline without its hero. After an unknown span of time passes, the seal restraining Ganondorf eventually breaks, allowing him to once again return to threaten Hyrule. In desperation, the Hylians pray to the goddesses for the return of the Hero of Time, and yet no hero appears. In a final act to contain Ganon, the goddesses flood Hyrule itself, submerging the ancient kingdom beneath a vast sea and giving rise to the world seen within the Wind Waker. It is here that we can draw a clear biblical parallel to Zelda, that being the flood narrative found within the Book of Genesis. In Genesis, mankind has become so consumed by wickedness and violence that it prompted divine judgment through a great flood, and likewise in Wind Waker, Ganon's return threatens to plunge Hyrule into darkness, thus prompting a divine response. And yet, in both narratives, the flood is not portrayed purely as destruction, but also preservation. God preserves Noah and his family, as well as the life within the Ark, so that creation may continue after the waters recede. Similarly, the goddesses preserve the people of Hyrule by allowing them to escape to the mountaintops that eventually become the islands scattered across the Great Sea. And yet there is another parallel that we can pull from this. By the end of the game, King Daphnes does not seek the restoration of Hyrule despite having the opportunity to do so. Instead, he chooses to let the old kingdom remain beneath the sea while asking the goddesses to grant Link and Zelda hope so that they may build a new future. This is comparable to a concept in Christian theology, that being the rebuilding of the world after the old has passed away, as stated in Revelation by John. "Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away." Many stories approach the conflict between good and evil through a variety of moral lenses. Sometimes the villain is portrayed as misunderstood, morally grey, or justified in their actions to some degree. However, The Legend of Zelda approaches evil as absolute. Across much of this series, evil is treated as something objective, something which cannot be argued or reasoned with. An idea which is held strongly within Christian doctrine. Evil is a corruption of what is good, the absence of God and his order which leads to erosion and degradation. This idea is present throughout Zelda's world building. When darkness spreads throughout Hyrule, the land physically decays. In Ocarina of Time, for example, Ganon's rise to power transforms Castletown from a thriving centre of life into a ruined wasteland haunted by redeads. In Twilight Princess, a darkness known as Twilight literally engulfs Hyrule, consuming the natural world and leaving its inhabitants as lost wandering spirits. Finally, in Breath of the Wild, Calamity Ganon spreads malice across the kingdom like a plague, an evil parasite, if you will. Evil has no independent creative power of its own, rather it corrupts and rots what is good. That is why we are called to hate what is evil and to oppose it, which is precisely the framework for which Zelda's storytelling operates on, to make no compromise with evil. Likewise, resisting that evil is consistently portrayed as a profound virtue and something to strive towards. We could certainly continue analysing countless other aspects of The Legend of Zelda and how they relate to Christianity and broader biblical themes. However, much like how my previous video concluded with an analysis of Link and Ganon, I believe it is only fitting that we conclude this discussion with the central figure of the franchise and the third wielder of the Triforce. That of course being Princess Zelda. Throughout the series, Zelda is consistently associated with wisdom and sacred power. This sacred power within her is often the driving force behind defeating evil. This is evident in both Ocarina of Time and Breath of the Wild, where she bestows light arrows to Link, a powerful weapon of pure light that cuts through the darkness. In many ways, she acts as the final instrument of destruction against evil. Yet, perhaps the most fascinating parallel between Princess Zelda and Christian theology is found in Skyward Sword, where Zelda is revealed to be the mortal reincarnation of the goddess Hylia. According to the game's lore, Hylia relinquishes her divine form and descends into mortality so that she may fully oppose demise and safeguard humanity. In doing so, she willingly humbles herself, taking on the limitations and vulnerabilities of human existence. Here, we can draw clear thematic parallels to Christ. God enters into humanity through the person of Jesus. Rather than remaining distant from human suffering, Christ willingly takes on the suffering of human nature in order to liberate the world from sin and death. Who, being in the very nature of God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. And yet the similarities don't even end there. If you recall earlier, we compared the nature of Nehru to Jesus. Zelda, being the holder of the Triforce of Wisdom, and hence Nehru's power, is likewise associated with that wisdom. Her power of discernment and heightened perception is evident throughout the franchise. For example, in Ocarina of Time, Zelda alone recognises the danger posed by Ganondorf long before he sees his power. We have already drawn parallels to Christ and his wisdom and love, so to avoid treading similar ground twice in one video, let's instead look at how love is manifested in Zelda's character. At the end of Ocarina of Time, Zelda returns Link to his youth so that he may experience the childhood that he lost, and in Twilight Princess, she offers up her own strength to heal Midna after she was gravely injured. Similarly, in Skyward Sword, Zelda seals herself away so that her power may remain protected from demise. In each instance, she exercises self-sacrifice and puts the desires of others before herself, which mirrors how love is described as in 1 Corinthians. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Oftentimes, our interpretations of media differ from those of both the author and our peers. So long as the interpretation has merit, it cannot be considered false. Art is inherently subjective, and therefore grants no absolute authority to any single interpretation. This video presents just one of the many ways in which The Legend of Zelda can be understood. With that being said, I sincerely hope you found this analysis entertaining. I have more videos planned where I analyse themes, stories and characters within fiction. If the prospect of that resonates with you, then please consider subscribing and hitting the bell icon so you don't miss out. Thanks for watching now. Ta-ra!